You go ahead. You can start it.
No, you go ahead.
No, you go ahead. You know how you want to begin, so.
No, I don't.
We're here today to do another one of our culture shock videos. This one is the Unwritten Rules of Dutch Society. Little etiquette things that we have learned over a period of 2.5 years that we've been here.
Stumbled into them
And you know what?
hard way.
We still are not really fully aware. We'll remind ourselves as we come upon these situations that, nope, the Dutch don't do that, or the Dutch do this or that.
One thing that we found out was, so we like the 4 seats configuration in
on the trains.
Yeah. On the trains. And there's actually a routine that you're supposed to do. But if you do go sit in the 4-seat configuration and you're one person, the way they do it is the first person goes to the window, the second person goes diagonal to them on the aisle so that they both have leg room. And then the next person joining takes the opposite window seat, and the next person joining takes the opposite aisle seat. So you have to do the diagonal. So that was something I didn't know.
This is new to me because I wasn't aware of this etiquette.
Yes, you were.
Sitting, maybe unconsciously. I don't know. I just never thought of it that way. So
you want room for your legs, you want room for your bag that you're carrying, and then you make room for the next person that joins, rather than having to make room for someone when there's 2 available empty seats that have plenty of space. You know, kind of like when you're on the escalator, you keep to the right, so people who need to walk up can walk on, or walk down can walk on the left.
Which is a separate etiquette thing.
That's a separate etiquette thing, but same public transit sort of scenario. Expats out there, people who are not going to be living here for very long, don't call the gemeente to complain about church bells. Don't do it.
It's a thing.
Yeah, it's
really
a thing.
Is, yeah.
There's been people complaining about the church bells going off. Every time you move to a place, it has its own sound. You're not going to tell the birds to shut up because they're waking you up. You also shouldn't tell people about the bells. Now, we have a personal experience with this. When we first moved to the Netherlands, we lived in Schiedam. We lived fairly close to the basilica there, which had a bell every hour. At first, it did wake us up a little bit in our REM sleep during the night, but eventually we got used to it and we didn't hear it anymore. I actually dog sat for a friend who lived right next to the basilica and never woke up in the night anymore. It's just like I grew up next to a circus, and there would be a calliope all summer long. That we
would
never
drive
heard it.
Me crazy.
We never heard it because we got used to it. It drove our relatives crazy when they visited us. But, you get used to the bells, but they're part of the character of the town, part of the history. Yeah. Those bells were ringing long before you were born. They'll be ringing long after you're gone. Yeah. So, just enjoy the history and the atmosphere of the Netherlands.
Yeah, I think we appreciate the history a lot. So I don't mind the bells at all. I love the bells, personally.
No. Yeah. Every time they ring, like if you're having a coffee out on the sidewalk, people watching, it's like...
I'm in Europe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mensen krijken.
The next thing we're going to mention, and this is actually kind of important. I didn't realize the importance of this because it forms an impression. You don't show up early to someone's house if you're planning a visit, and you don't show up late either. There's sort of like a 10-minute window between you're showing up early and late. So if you show up too early, it's frowned upon. You show up too late, it's frowned upon and considered rude. So we've always been pretty good about showing up on time to people's places if we've been invited to a party or dinner or whatever. But it's again goes along with the Dutch mindset of not wasting people's time, showing consideration, not being rude, and
also giving them time to set up.
Yeah.
So if you show up 15, 20 minutes early, that's when they're still putting everything together for their guests.
Yeah, it reflects how regimented they are. They're very disciplined as far as scheduling their time. So you've got to respect that. That's all.
And they are very good hosts. So if you show up early, they're going to feel the need to host you when they're still trying to finish up the dinner that they're planning to put out. So it's or they're still vacuuming the house or something like that. So don't show up too early, don't show up too late, except for everything else, show up on time, or maybe a little bit early.
And I had personal experience of this. When we would show up, we would misjudge the train time arriving at a friend's place for dinner. And so we'd kind of look at the time and, we're 20 minutes early. And you'd kind of walk around a little bit, and then time it so that you show up at their door, and sure enough, other people would be showing up at exactly the same. So people know, they're aware of this tendency of some people to show up early or late, and so it'd be very common to see everybody kind of showing up at exactly the same time outside somebody's door for a dinner or a party or something.
Yeah, but if you're going to meet a friend at a restaurant, if you're going to work, if you're going to the doctor's office, show up 5-10 minutes early, but definitely be there on time. The Dutch are very punctual.
Very punctual, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Another thing to be aware of is the 6 p.m. rule. And this is a real thing. It's basically between 6 and 7:30 is designated dinner time in the Netherlands. Okay, so you do not show up, don't call, don't assume that you can just communicate with someone during that period of time. It really is. That's like a regimented dinner time, 6 to 7:30.
Don't even text, because their phone might go off during dinner and they might feel, the impulse to look at it. We've broken this because we didn't know.
Yeah.
Our time that we eat is all over the map depending on our schedule. Like he works a on-off schedule, so
Or work shifts, different shifts, so it doesn't matter to us.
But we were not aware that the Dutch life is somewhat regimented.
Yeah.
Between 5 and 5:30, shops close. People get off work, who work regular hours, and they come home and they start making dinner or eating dinner 6 to 7:30. And so it's not polite to go visit a neighbor during that time. But also, if you're at a friend's house around 5:30, don't be offended if you're not invited to stay for dinner, because the Dutch will make. Now we make a lot of food. Americans tend to cook more for leftovers the next day. The Dutch will cook fresh food in the amounts that they need, the number of people that they're serving. So don't be insulted if you're at someone's house hanging out at 5:30 and they say, okay, I got to get dinner ready, and they don't invite you to stay because they don't have enough food or they haven't cooked enough for another person.
Again, it goes along with the directness, but people over here know that. So if they say, well, we're going to get ready for dinner now. Oh, time to go. So you'll get up and leave. And there's another confirmation of this is I happen to be walking outside our apartment area here, and all the smells would fill the air at around 5:30, 5:45 or so. So you'd start, yes, they're having dinner at 6 o'clock. It's an overpowering aroma of all these different dinners being prepared at the same time.
It's kind of nice. It reminds me of my childhood. You hear everyone in their kitchens, and but the other part of it is if you get an invite to someone's house at 8, clarify if it's for dinner, for drinks, just to hang out, because you might get an invite for 8, and in the U.S. you would assume that's for dinner.
Yeah.
It might not be. So you might show up at 8 having not eaten, ready for a big meal, and not be served, you might be served coffee and a koekje. So we found this one out from our viewers. We had spoken in another one of our videos, Dutch Mindsets, about this one, and we had made a faux pas and didn't realize it. The viewers pointed it out kindly, and that was that we had gone to someone's house for dinner. They had announced that the dinner was over, and we had many people say, oh, that's rude. They're supposed to give you coffee first, and then that's the end of dinner.
Yeah.
Well, they did give us coffee, and we didn't know that was the thing.
Yeah.
In the U.S., you kind of have coffee to settle your stomach, and then you go on into another room and have a real conversation that goes on. Coffee isn't the signal.
Yeah, it's a signal. It's kind of like the night is winding down. Get ready to leave. Coffee is sort of like the precursor to that, to start gathering your things and get ready. The party's over, kind of a message.
So that's your signal.
Yeah.
If they give you coffee after dinner, then that's your cue that after you finish your coffee, you say goodnight.
Yeah.
And we made that mistake.
Yeah,
we did.
Unless they outwardly come out and say, would you like another drink? Or they make it known that the night is going to be extended. We were actually ignorant of this to the point where we were actually told, okay, party's over, time to go. So, and then we kind of looked at each other like, that was rude. Well, no, it wasn't.
It's not. So the next thing we're going to talk about is Tikkie culture. So Tikkie is an app here. It's kind of like Venmo in the United States, which allows you to send a bill to a friend or split that pizza, you owe me 10. They use the Tikkie a lot here because the term going Dutch, which means everyone kicks in for their share.
Yeah, we grew up with that term, actually.
Yeah. Here it's definitely much more pronounced. In the U.S., sometimes there's confusion about the etiquette. Someone invites you to dinner. you're like, well, if they invited me, does that mean they're picking up the check? And often in the US, they are. Someone might say, let's go grab a coffee. And then they might just go ahead and, no, just put it on my card. In the Netherlands, don't be surprised if a friend invites you for a coffee and then afterwards you get a tikkie for $2.50. Here, they split it more because, again, that's protecting the equality of the relationship. A friend will let you know if they can afford to pick up the check. They'll say, this is on me or whatever, and you just say, oh, thanks. But often it's not done because of it becomes hierarchical all of a sudden. I'm holding something over you because I picked up the check. Now you owe me. Or now I have a little more influence in the relationship because, hey, I paid for that big dinner. You know what I mean? So it's more about protecting that equality and, again, the frugalness too of this is what I can afford, so this is what I'm willing to pay for my meal. And I don't want any surprises.
Yeah, we may think that this is something that doesn't happen a lot, but it does. People will assume, we know people like this, that will assume if I'm invited for dinner, then I don't have to pay it. It's being picked up. Well, over here, it's definitely a different attitude and a different culture as far as that goes. Everybody seems to know, okay, I'm going to get my portion billed to me through Tikkie. So, yeah.
And I like it too because, like Mark and I, we've always had to watch every penny. And sometimes in New York, we'd go out with friends. And the thing there was to split the bill down in equal portions based on who was there. And we would be watching, we'd have water instead of a drink or things like that to try to keep our bill down. And then one of our friends would get a bottle of wine or something like that, and then say, hey, should we split it? And then we end up paying for a portion of their wine. And we're like, we didn't plan on that. So for us, we really like the Tikkie culture here because it does help us to budget and plan.
The next one we're going to talk about is capsones. It goes along with the Dutch modesty, really, and it's don't brag. A lot of people in other cultures can like to brag about things that they're going through in life, or if they're doing well financially. The Dutch don't do that. So unless
you get a good deal.
If you get a good deal.
The Dutch like to save money where they can.
Yep.
They're very good with being frugal. And I love this one because in the U.S. it's the opposite. You're trying to do better than your neighbors, than your friends. So you have to have a better car than them, or at least the same quality of car, or a better house, or a better vacation.
Many people think this, not everybody.
Yeah, a lot of people. Yeah. The United States is not a monolith, but it's kind of the way that culture kind of pushes you. It's that you have to be self-made, and by being self-made, you have to climb this corporate ladder or this capitalist ladder. And over here, it's much more about we're all on the equal level, and so, do normal. Here, getting a good bargain is something that everybody wants. And so it's not about classism. It's about celebrating frugality, of being smart with your money. And it's also, keeping that egalitarianism here, that we are all equal. We're not fighting with each other for status. Don't get us wrong, though. If you get a promotion at your job, you get a new house, celebrate. They do celebrate.
Yes.
They will have housewarmings. People will say gefeliciteerd. So they do love to celebrate those moments in your life, but not lord them over each other.
Yeah, matter of fact, getting a raise is actually, that's when you do celebrate. If you get a raise or if you get a promotion, my previous job, they'd break out the cake. The cake would come out and they would celebrate this person's promotion. So it's a celebration, not rights to brag, about getting that promotion. Yep. The next thing we're going to talk about is criticisms and how they're given in the U.S. versus the Netherlands. In the U.S., they tend to sugarcoat their criticisms, based on what the situation is.
The criticism sandwich.
This criticism sandwich. So if you were say you're at work and your boss says, you did a good job, but I think you should talk this way to the client next time. They have to kind of put that buffer in there. I think the idea is not to hurt your feelings.
Yeah, so they start with a compliment.
Yeah.
They go to the criticism, and then they end with another compliment.
Yeah, so the sandwich, hence the sandwich. In the Dutch, it goes along with their straightforwardness and the Dutch directness, and they'll just say, you should talk this way to the client next time. And it's not said in a mean way, but it is just it's not wasting time, basically.
Yeah, get to the point.
Yeah.
And, and it works because, like, the criticism sandwich doesn't really work anyways. Every time my boss would compliment me, I was waiting for the other shoe to drop, going, but, no, but, I'm just complimenting you. It's like, oh, okay.
There's always a but in there somewhere in the back of your mind.
Even when there's no but, you're waiting for the but. So it doesn't really work. It's just a trigger to be suddenly stiffen up. But
and again, it's not a bad, over here, it's not done in a mean way. But they will just the Dutch are very efficient. They're not going to waste time, and they're going to tell you, you shouldn't say that, or you should say this next time, and then conversation over. Let's have our coffee and get back to work.
And a difference from the U.S. is that you can criticize your boss. You can tell your boss if you have a problem. Management is more they manage things. There's not as much of a hierarchy here that. They control every aspect of your life while you're at work and sometimes after.
Yeah.
Here, you can criticize your boss or give him your criticism, rather, because that helps with polderen, which is compromise. You come to an understanding of each other, a better understanding, where you can work together better if you both are open and honest with each other.
Yeah, and I'm not used to that. It's kind of drilled into me from moving over here, so wouldn't even think about criticizing my boss. I've had a couple of jobs since I've been here, and I don't do that. It's not that you can't. It's just it's drilled into the Dutch from a young age. You can it's being direct, being honest, and you can go ahead and do that. So,
yeah, I mean, I've had jobs where I've had to call my boss, even though I'm spending 8 hours a day side by side with him. I had to call him Mr. So-and-so. I couldn't call him by their first name. Here you can call anyone by their first name. So it's a much more casual, again, egalitarian way of doing things over here.
And it's also reflected in the way, it's a less, when you go to an office environment, people are dressed much more casually too. It sort of reflects that attitude.
Yeah, because it's not about, it's if you're doing your job, I don't care if you're in jeans. I mean, some jobs have dress requirements. But yeah, so things here are a little more relaxed and on the hierarchy, and that's so that you can actually get to the point and get the work done and get it done with the sense of not just efficiency, but of everyone's pulling their weight. So another thing is the art of klagen. Klagen is to complain.
To complain. Yep.
And it's different than the U.S. In the U.S., if someone complains, it's usually when they're on, they're ready to explode. Yeah,
yes.
they've been suppressing everything, and this is the breaking point.
Yeah.
Over here, it's the release valve. Yeah. So you complain more to make sure you never get to that point.
Yeah.
It's a technique that allows you to release the energy so that you don't have to de-escalate. Whereas in the U.S., usually if someone complains, it's a de-escalation point, and then they got to work to bring it down.
Yeah.
Here, they do complain. They like to complain because not only is it, like I said, that release valve, but it's a social bonding. It's like you can bond over the same things. Oh my God, the NS trains or the government or anything like that. You can find common ground with a stranger, with a neighbor, with a coworker.
Something very specific you're complaining about. Right?
Yeah, something that's relatable. And so that's a social bonding. But it also creates social change. If, like we said about the criticisms with the boss, if you criticize something, if you go to the gemeente about something, if enough people complain, then it gives them an eye on a problem that needs solving, so you can make change. But also in that regard, you don't go to the gemeente before you address the person that you're complaining about or the issue. If there is a way for you to address the issue yourself directly, they prefer that. And we were surprised by that because, like landlords here, if you have a problem with a neighbor in the U.S., you would call your landlord or HOA or whatever, and you would complain about the person. So you go to a safe mediator. But over here, they'll say to you, did you talk to your neighbor
person
first?
Yeah, talk directly to the person who you're complaining about.
Yeah, because here it's all about open conversation. Did you address it with them so that they could be heard, so that they had an opportunity to fix it before you come to us? But another thing about Klagen is that it's not therapy. If you become that person who complains all the time, and some people love Klagen, that's their pastime.
We know them.
You run the risk of having people shut their ears to you.
Getting the reputation of a person who complains all the time.
So then you're not social bonding. You're not getting social change. You're not just venting. you're actually bringing down people's sense of gezelligheid. That's not being a good neighbor, friend, coworker.
You don't want to get
either.
a reputation of being someone that complains all the time either. So
So that also leads into gedogen. Gedogen is to tolerate, and the Dutch are known as being a very tolerant society, but it has its limits, and that is if you are affecting someone's ability to do normal, or if you're not being normal on level with everyone else, or if you're affecting their gezelligheid, then that is not tolerated.
As an example, if a child is being a child, okay, say the child is being loud and I don't know, misbehaving, you take it as a child being a child. You don't complain about it, and you tolerate it. So you let that go.
Yeah, kids have bad days.
Yeah.
They see kids are allowed to, life for them right now is a science experiment. They're much more tolerant of kids being free to be kids here. So, but
yeah. So there's a limit to that.
Yeah.
So if it goes outside the norm and it interferes with your, we mentioned it, gezelligheid, then you're going to say something if it goes on too long or if it becomes too annoying.
Yeah, if they're being destructive or if it's something that the parent can control. Like if a child starts crying, a child's being a child.
Yeah.
They're having a bad day or a bad moment. But if a child's playing a video game super loud in the silent car and the parent has the ability to give the kid headphones or to have them, mute it, and they are not, you're affecting the gezelligheid for everyone else, and they will be intolerant of that.
Right.
But that's also part of the unwritten rules, is if you're going to have a party, let your neighbors know. They're much more gedogen about your party if you warn them in advance. They'll say, okay, this is the birthday party they told us about. But even then, telling them does not mean playing the music until 2 a.m. So the Dutch really respect equality, tolerance, but this is a densely populated country, so we all have to watch out for each other, take care of each other here, and make sure that we do normal, which doesn't mean losing your individuality. Yeah. It just means making sure that you're not squashing someone else's comfort in life as well. So these unwritten rules all really seem to go down to we behave as a member of that community in a way that is showing respect to everybody.
This is what we just wanted to point out that we've learned. It's taken time for us to kind of learn these, and people would teach us really over a period of time.
The easy way and the hard way.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you like these culture shock talk videos, we try to do one once a month. We do have a playlist on the channel of some of the others we've covered, like Dutch mindsets that we appreciate, some habits that we've changed living here. And we just really appreciate that you've watched another one with us. But do let us know in the comments what we've gotten wrong, because we're not asserting authority here.
Right. If we're
we're
missing,
still learning.
If we're missing some items too that we mentioned here that you'd like to point out some more to us, we love that. So please let us know.
Yeah. Thanks so much, guys, and have a wonderful day.
Have a great day. Doei.